Graham Norton in this chair. If I had control over handle now.
I'm just glad there's people here.
This is Bruce Flohr. The details, for those who maybe need a little bit of filling in, but you know some of the bigger picture. Throughout Bruce's 20 years in the music business, Bruce Flohr has continuously evolved. After running college radio station KCPR, he joined RCA as head of alternative promotion, then moved into a dual A&R marketing position at RCA and signed the Dave Matthews Band, Foo Fighters and others. In 2002 then joined Red Light Management and ATO Records, and Bruce serves as an A&R resource for both ATO and RLM clients, as well as handling artist management duties. You're also a founding partner at Greenlight, which works with brands such as Amex, Gillette and Hyundai to build exclusive music-driven campaigns. That's at least 3 pages on LinkedIn, in my reckoning.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start by just maybe going back even 10, 15 years, which is quite recent. Marketing was so different then. There was no social media. I'm thinking of Foo Fighters, take that 10, 15 years ago. Publicity then versus publicity now. What are some of the most obvious differences for you as a manager?
Well, I'm going to touch on a bunch of stuff because I don't really know what the room wants to discuss, and I want to leave it open for questions because me sitting up here and pontificating about what I do for a living seems kind of boring. So if there are stuff that you want to talk about, feel free to interrupt me. I think really the age of a music manager today is evolving into really helping artists craft stories. As we stream and sample music, it's becoming more and more difficult to get an audience to truly engage because we can taste things, but we don't really want to absorb them. And becoming storytellers is my opinion, is a way we can have the audience actually give a shit about the band as opposed to just listening.
So even Malcolm McLaren, the Sex Pistols manager, he said the music wasn't important. It was a declaration of intent and attitude. And I think that might have been even specifically about when he put the Sex Pistols on a boat outside the Houses of Parliament to sing God Save the Queen. Has it actually changed, other than the technology of it, has the message changed? Do we still just need to get a big punch between the eyes of a story? We need to know these people are individuals.
I think it's changed. I think that, there's still the old school mentality that you have to have a big first week and it's like opening up a movie. But I think it's changing. I'm finding now more and more that the artists that I'm having the most success with are the ones that never go away. They don't disappear. They're constantly having a daily conversation with their audience, and they're constantly putting out music so that you stay in front of your audience and stay relevant. And that's difficult because if you think about the creative process, putting a gun to your artist's head saying, I need more and more and more, can really hurt the quality of the music. It takes an artist a long time to craft a great record, and instead of saying, hey, go away and live your life and come back and give me 10 great songs, now I'm saying, hey, what'd you do yesterday? And it's a very, very fine balance. And the artists, I think, are having to adapt quickly because they're realizing, oh no, I have to be great all the time.
So they really are on all the time. I'd like to, if I can, reference one particular band that you work with, the Foo Fighters.
Yep.
So recently, they did the TV show and the documentary.
Sonic Highways.
Sonic Highways, where they created a whole other side industry for Foo Fighters. Was that you putting pressure on them, or was that Dave Grohl and the guys thinking, we need to keep making an impact, keep making a difference?
So just to be clear, I signed the Foo Fighters to RCA Records, but they're managed by John Silva.
Okay.
I'm still close with the band and had a conversation with Dave Grohl not long ago where he basically said, I don't want to just make a record anymore because it's not enough. So Sonic Highways was his way of, once again, storytelling. And if you're familiar with the show, you'll realize that the actual show was bigger than the record itself. The record itself was almost secondary. But what it did for the band was elevate their career, elevate their profile, if that's even possible, because they are the world's biggest rock band.
In terms of social media then, for instance, I saw a presentation yesterday about social media manager from CNN. She's an Irish woman called Samantha Barry, and she was given an example of the Democratic debate whereby CNN took over as many social media channels as possible. They did Snapchat, they did Facebook, they did Instagram, which you wouldn't necessarily associate with politics. Is it the role of the manager and the band together to populate all of these social media forums, or do you pick and choose and say, that will suit better to this artist or that will suit this band?
Yeah, I think, everybody, a lot of managers will tell their artists that they're their own brand. I'm not convinced that every band should be a brand. I'm not convinced they're all that good. But I do believe that an artist has to grow and has to have a voice on these different platforms. The problem is we all see content and it's like, okay, great, we need content, and we spray and pray and put it everywhere. I'd rather be more focused and find a few social media partners that are going to give me more access to the audience that I want to speak to, and in return, I give better content. It's difficult, though. It's one thing to be the Foo Fighters and have $5 million that you can go do Sonic Highways with. It's another thing to be, a band like the Alabama Shakes starting out, and there's no content budget, right? But yet you need somebody on the road with them filming stuff all the time. It's very difficult to feed the beast.
Do you find that you would have a preference for, let's say, and I imagine it's not the case, but maybe the larger number? So you're looking for big numbers of followers on Twitter. You want the super fans. You want the people with the verified ticks to join in and be part of the fans. Or are you going for more specific fans? Maybe a Foo Fighters super fan who happens to have 8,000 Foo Fighters fanatics, or whatever artist you're managing right now that you're pushing?
Well, I think the technology is starting to catch up, and the data is there. The one thing that frustrates me about the music business, and I'm just as guilty about this, is that I know more about our customer than ever before. The problem is I don't either have access to that data, or I still don't know how to interpret it, because we're still in the music business, and the music business was run on gut and instinct, but it's maturing now. And what we need is to take some of the brains that are out there on the technology side, lay our data out in front and go, these are the people you should be talking to, and these are the ones that you can actually sell more stuff to. Since we're not selling them music, I have to sell more stuff. Otherwise, bands like Alabama Shakes don't get to go get a tour bus and go on tour so they can grow. Now, there is technology starting to happen where you can identify the people that are streaming your music the most, and then turn around and send things to them. Basically, you find your whales and you make offerings to those folks. That's starting to catch up. Companies like Bandpage and whatnot are doing that. But that's still a full-time job, and the music industry hasn't caught up to what's available to us. Maybe some have. I might be behind the 8 ball in that regard, but I believe it's coming quickly.
So in terms of marketing your band and managing your band, we'd have to touch a little bit on, there's a lot of delicate egos, I imagine, that you're dealing with. And if you go to them and say, I really think this forum would suit you, I'd like more of this, I'd like more of that, how do you balance the ego with the demand and maybe the increased workload, since social media and beyond are so much more important now?
It's a pace, it's a conversation that you have to have. And I worked with Miley Cyrus during the Bangers record, and her social media is a different animal than a rock band. So, and you also need, a band has to have a vision. They have to want to tell a story. A lot of bands want to just turn over their social medias to somebody in the office, and candidly, you can tell. You can tell when it's not authentic. But I'm more interested in working with artists that actually are going to understand technology, can help them make their art better, rather than just push their art out to sell more stuff.
Okay.
It's a fine balance, and we're still learning it.
So if I was to throw the example of Adele at you, hugely successful. She beat the record for the most watched video on YouTube by, I think, maybe some tens of millions in the last week or two. She's somebody that freely admits to being completely nervous of going out touring. For you as a manager, do you look at somebody like that and go, God, this could be so much better if I could just push her out? Or is it just squeeze the music out of her?
Adele's a phenomenon. I wish I had that problem. I think it adds to the mystique. I think one of the problems with social media is that we almost know too much. Hey, Vince, how you doing, dude? I didn't know you came all the way over here. It's Vince Bannon, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, every time I see him, I get nervous. Thanks, buddy. What was I saying? Oh, so anyways, I think that sometimes the artist being too accessible loses the mystique. And there's a reason why the stage is elevated, right? We put our rock stars up on those stages, and when they come down and they try to mingle with us normal people, it kind of is like, oh, they're just one of us. So I think with someone like Adele, I love the fact that that you can't just get to her.
Okay, I want to touch a little bit on crisis management. I'll give you an example of Conor McGregor, an Irish mixed martial artist, who he put up a couple of quite inflammatory tweets and Facebook posts recently, as I remember it. Really inflammatory. And then his management are left reeling in the wake of him having slagged off pretty much all of the UK. As a manager, do you dread those moments, or do you feed off them and think, brilliant, this is where I can really get in and, out of this shitstorm, just calm everything down and get positive publicity out of it?
Well, I'm usually busy dealing with my own personal crisis. There's been thousands of examples. I mean, Ariana Grande licks a donut in a donut store, and for 24 hours, we all want to, go out and burn our Ariana Grande T-shirts, and then next thing you know, she's selling out arenas. So, I mean, you have to kind of play it by ear. It's like there's things, when I was dealing with Miley Cyrus, there was 1,000 times that I would just go, ugh. But who can argue? It seems to be working for her.
Although in the case of Miley Cyrus, I heard that she had to cancel some tour dates because of the cost of transporting the giant tongue. You're familiar with the giant Miley Cyrus tongue that I think she used to slide out of onto the stage. I mean, she obviously is an artist who's demanding, X amount of large set, and you're saying cost really, it's not going to add up.
Yeah.
Who wins? Is it you or is it Miley? What does it come down to?
Oh, I definitely lost managing Miley. She wins. Miley does what Miley wants.
Okay.
And, to her credit, there's a lot of people that's why they like her.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about the more current and the newer artists, but I want to touch on the legacy artists because I know that you work with the Dave Matthews Band, and in the States, there'd be a legacy band, and maybe to touch on them and the likes of Lionel Richie that you would have a connection with as well.
Yeah.
They're not going to be necessarily all up in your face on social media, so how do you manage and keep relevant some of the legacy acts?
I think that the way you take an artist that's been around for a long time is to constantly challenge them from a creative standpoint. I think that the minute an artist stops moving forward, they're going backwards. So the real challenge, especially when an artist who's very successful and you're not necessarily worried about paying the bills, is you really have to focus on the art itself to keep them inspired, because the jet's paid for and the tongue is paid for, or whatever it is. So with what my company's doing with Lionel Richie is they're reinventing him by putting him in places like the Reading festivals and places that you normally wouldn't have seen him before, because the man has a catalog of hits and he's still a great performer. But instead of sending him to Vegas and letting him do his show at Caesars, they're putting him out there and taking risks, and those risks are paying back.
So maybe Britney Spears is ahead of her time going to Vegas at this stage.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned as well, I know we're getting a little tight on time, but you too, as one of those legacy acts that constantly reinvent and reinvent.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to see them tomorrow. Are we going tomorrow? Tomorrow in Glasgow. But I look at that band who's, done everything right and made some mistakes. But what I like about it is that they've taken chances. Most bands are afraid to take chances because they're afraid to offend or piss people off or hurt their core. And I think in the new world order, your core is constantly the new fan as opposed to the one that's been around for a long time.
And yet I think the way you two do it, they manage to maintain the old and obviously get some of the new along the way as well. They get thrown into the Glastonbury situation, as it were, and suddenly their fan base is increasing. Let me finish up then. We've about 2 minutes left. I want to ask you about disappearing social media, so the likes of Periscope and Snapchat. Traditionally the place where, Snapchat, there'd be a lot of, let's face it, dick pics. It's where a lot of people go to misbehave and have the fun and have the crack, in the Irish sense of the word crack.
Yep.
Do management look on that and go, how can we maintain this? Can we add this to the artist's storytelling?
Yes. I mean, I think all of those things, what I like to try to do with the new technologies is get to them early and figure out how my bands can be early adopters, therefore get the best service possible, as opposed to just be one of many. So I would rather be a big fish in a little pond than have my Snapchat page just be dangling out there. And it really comes down to knowing what's going to be next and getting there early.
And so do you look around Web Summit and do you get a feel for what's going to be next?
Sure,
do you
that's
meet
one,
people
one of the
who are
main
gonna be...
reasons I'm here is just to find out what is next. And what the next thing is, based on the content that we control as a company, I sometimes feel like if we work together, I can help move the needle of that company. As opposed to just, here's one band and here's their song, can you post it? It's like, hey, let's do a partnership and do it across the board and maybe get a brand involved and get it funded, and then it becomes a real conversation as opposed to, here's my single, what can you do with it? That to me is antiquated and boring and does not make anybody any money.
So if you've got anything interesting for this man, grab him afterwards because he'll be looking
Can I-
for
can I-
researchers.
Can I ask you guys a question as we finish up? That's the fastest 20 minutes ever.
Yeah.
Don't you guys feel like we're missing an awesome party out there? I mean, it's so, like, here we are just sitting here, you guys are listening to me, and out there they're raging. So I expect to see you out there.
Bruce, such a pleasure to speak with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Flohr.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.